no preparations here. There are no gas masks to buy. There's nothing anyone can do. This is the kind of place where people believe if you put tape on your windows that could keep out chemical gas. So they're just fleeing further into the countryside. They are afraid of Iraqi forces, even though their leaders are telling them it's safe, they should go back to the villages, back to the towns. They're not going to. But they're perhaps even more afraid, Christiane, of Turkish forces, particularly after tonight's vote in which the Turkish parliament said that it would send Turkish forces here. Now, a senior Kurdish leader tells us that that is unacceptable, that in his conversations with American officials in Ankara over the past couple of days, Kurdish leaders have reiterated that they would not accept Turkish troops here. That's still something that's being worked out with the Americans. Christiane?
And that's something that's going to have to be watched very carefully, because clearly Turkey has not allowed U.S. forces to be stationed there. U.S. forces would have come in for a northern front and to protect some of those strategic locations that the Turks were concerned about, for instance, the oil fields and others there. So if this boils down to a situation where the Turkish forces come in, everybody has been saying that that could be a recipe for potential chaos, and we are going to have to watch that very, very carefully. In the meantime, we're going to go to Wolf again.
Thanks very much, Christiane. As we look at these live pictures of Baghdad, where we've heard sirens going off on and off over the past hour or so, our Nick Robertson on the scene saying out in the outskirts of Baghdad right now, heavy thuds, the sound of bombs presumably going off, but we don't have more details of that right now. Here in Kuwait, the government strongly supporting the Bush administration, the United States government, in this showdown with Iraq. There's another country in this part of the world that also strongly supports the Bush administration, namely the government of Israel. CNN's Kelly Wallace is in Tel Aviv right now. We all remember, Kelly, a dozen years ago, the Israelis suffered at the hands of Saddam Hussein, 39 Scud missiles landing in and around Tel Aviv at that time. Tell us what's going on in Israel right now.
Well, for that reason, Israelis are watching the situation in Iraq very, very closely. But right now, the Israeli government's assessment continues to be the same. Israeli officials are still saying they believe there is a very, very low probability of a successful Iraqi Scud attack on Israel. And so that is why there is a real sense of calm, relative calm on the streets, even in Tel Aviv, the area that really bore the brunt of those 39 Iraqi Scud attacks in 1991. But as we show you, if we can show you some live pictures of the streets of Tel Aviv, you can see it's relatively quiet. This is the start of the weekend here in Israel. Normally the streets would be filled with people. There is a sense of relative quiet. People are going about their lives, kids going to school. Attendance, though, in the Tel Aviv area, very low, just about 20%. But this interesting point, in 1991, many people in this area left Tel Aviv. They went to Jerusalem or to southern parts of the country considered safe when it comes to any possible Iraqi Scud attack. But according to an Israeli newspaper poll, 84% of people in this area say they plan to stay. Now, there is tremendous cooperation going on between Israel and the United States. Prime Minister Sharon got a heads up from Secretary of State Colin Powell 90 minutes before the start of the first U.S. strikes in Iraq. And there are unprecedented steps the two countries are taking to try and prevent any Iraqi Scud attack and to prevent Israel from getting involved in any way. You have upgraded American Patriot anti-missile systems deployed in the most populated parts of this country. You have at least 600 American soldiers in Israel. The U.S. is also loaning to Israel an early warning system. So now Israel will have about 6 to 7 minutes notice of any Iraqi Scud attack. That's twice the notice it had in 1991. And then this unprecedented step, the U.S. is sharing real-time classified information about the military campaign in Iraq with the Israelis. Wolf, all of this is the Americans want to show Israel they are doing everything they possibly can to prevent any attack and, again, to prevent Israel from getting involved in any way. Wolf?
And Kelly, before I let you go, I know Israeli intelligence analysts have been carefully studying that videotape of Saddam Hussein, just as U.S. intelligence analysts have been studying it. What's the bottom line assessment of the Israelis, who are experts, of course, in trying to understand the Iraqi leader?
The bottom line assessment from these Israeli analysts, they believe it is Saddam Hussein, although they believe the Iraqi leader recorded this in a hurry. They thought it was interesting. He was wearing glasses, his speech, he was looking down a lot. They sense this as a man who is facing some pressure, but they do believe it is Saddam Hussein, and they can't say, though, exactly if it was live or pre-recorded, but they do think it was the Iraqi leader. Wolf.
Kelly Wallace in Tel Aviv, where it's obviously right now still very quiet. Back to you, Aaron.
Thank you. Quickly to Nick Robertson. We have a better sense of what has been hit, or at least that something has been hit. Nick?
Aaron, now 10 to midnight here. We're hearing the all clear sirens go off indeed at this moment from Iraqi officials on Iraq's television here a little earlier, saying that a number of locations around the country have been hit, perhaps giving us some elements of the big picture, just as the air raid siren giving the all clear there just winds itself down. The Iraq's television saying that a military site in Basra in the south of the country, close to the border with Kuwait, had been hit. A target, they said, had been hit in Akashat. That is a town about 300 miles northwest of Baghdad, a town very close to the Syrian border. So an indication there that targets in many different areas of the country being hit, perhaps targets that people had not initially expected to be hit, targets perhaps not in the way of invading forces, perhaps targets that didn't initially indicate high-value government or leadership targets, but Iraq reporting that a target close to the border with Syria was hit. Iraq, interestingly, reporting that 4 of its fighters have been killed as well. Very interesting that at this early stage it is already admitting to some fatalities, Aaron.
I'm sorry, will you say that last thing again? 4 of its what?
What? 4 of its fighters. An interesting wording, and perhaps the wording is important, but Iraq's television said that 4 of its fighters, rather than soldiers, had been killed.
Got it.
This could be an indication, Aaron, between the Iraqi government making a differentiation between soldiers in the regular army and Ba'ath Party volunteers. According to Iraq's government, there have been some 2 million Iraqi Ba'ath Party volunteers, that's the ruling party here, the Ba'ath Party, who had been armed with Kalashnikovs. Perhaps when they say fighters, this is what they're referring to, Aaron.
Nick, thank you very much. Nick Robertson. Just going back for a second to something Kelly Wallace said. She was talking about the blasé attitude, somewhat blasé attitude of Israelis. We were looking at the front page of the Jerusalem Post the other day. The big banner headline that day, and it was big and bold, was President Bush issues ultimatum. And then on the side column, as almost an afterthought, citizens told to carry gas masks wherever they go. It gives you a sense of perhaps what 50 years of tension and war will do to your mentality, but it does also say that the Israelis are a bit more blasé, if that's the fair word for it, than perhaps we are. President Bush, when he talked earlier to reporters, mentioned that this war is an effort to make the homeland, our homeland, more secure. John